Lorde's sophomore record, Melodrama, is the timeless journey of a young woman's coming of age in turbulent times. It's also on every gay person I know's top 10 album recommendations. I was going to make a basic retrospective video, but instead for Pride Month, I want to analyze why Melodrama has such a strong queer fan base and how Lorde added to the tapestry of gay culture with Melodrama. Today we're looking at the queer roots of Lorde's Melodrama. We need to look at the title, Melodrama. What does it mean? The dictionary defines melodrama as the sensational dramatic piece with exaggerated characters and exciting events intended to appeal to the emotions. Historically, melodrama has always been a cinematic genre, and I want to talk about the cinematic implications of melodrama as a title choice and throughout the album. It was a prevalent genre in the olden days of filmmaking, usually centered around romances that took absurd and overdramatic turns. Today, we've seen a revival of this genre, particularly in coming-of-age narratives. Think of the movies like Call Me By Your Name, The Edge of 17, and yes, even TV shows like Riverdale.
Apparently, there was a mass seizure at school.
Lorde's album is essentially a musical version of such works, and a modern take at that. Wait, where do the gay people come in? Well, melodramatic stories and queer people have a very storied history together beyond Lorde. There was something irresistible to gay men and women back then who saw themselves represented particularly by the women in these stories. In such traditionally conservative times, this was the closest that we'd actually get to any form of representation. Gotta love those Judeo-Christian values, am I right, ladies? One classic camp film comes to mind when it comes to melodrama. I always think of All That Heaven Allows. It's the story about a widow who falls in love with her gardener who's younger and much poorer than she is. Her children flip out because they don't approve and basically cockblock her from her chance at one true love, only to realize that they ruined their mom's chance at love, and then she gets with the guy after he has a tragic accident. It sounds like a really simple story, but if you watch it, it is so extra. And if you layer the music that Lorde has made over this 1955 film and a bunch of other films from the time, it weirdly fits in this weird, surreal way. Melodramas tend to be very hyper-specific, and Lorde is the queen of hyper-specificity. Let's be real here, none of us are absurdly talented and famous New Zealanders entering womanhood in New York for the very first time, but these universal experiences that she speaks truth about, we may have lived in some way or form, so we attach ourselves to it. For narrative purposes, the story is a loose concept record about a house party and the events and the atmosphere that happened there, and now I'm going to give you a quick recap of the story as told by Lorde and Genius. We begin the story with Green Light. It's about a woman who's been scorned by an ex-lover. Coincidentally enough, Lorde had broken up with the muse, a pure heroine, around the time of recording this record. We then move on to Sober, a minimalistic soliloquy about whether or not a confession of love holds its true value after the liquor runs out. Soliloquy, what does that mean? Hey, that's pretty neat. Lorde takes a break from romance to talk about Homemade Dynamite, a euphoric song about just being out with your friends and having a good time. Then we transition to the Louvre, which is about the mania of meeting someone so new and how this love is worthy of being at the literal Louvre. Just not on the front, just in the back, but it's still the Louvre, so it means something to her. Liability is the moment that she realizes that she's too much for the people in her life. Her love has consequence, while Hard Feelings talks about the feeling of falling out of love, while Loveless on the tail end represents the feeling that our entire generation's just doomed when it comes to love. Sober 2, Melodrama, details the lights coming up after the party has truly ended, and it's a reprise, one of the first reprises. The presence of motifs and reprises throughout this album really lend to a cohesive cinematic feeling. She creates things that she comes back to, unlike some records, honestly, which are just loose concepts. Like Lorde is telling a linear story somewhat here. Writer in the dark details the acceptance of realizing that a romance is truly over and the steps that one takes to move on. Her superpower is being able to move on from this guy. Supercut is remembrance without attachment. Whereas Liability Reprise is the second reprise in this record. It's the acceptance of her role, her life, and herself. Then she brings it all to a close with Perfect Places, my own personal favorite track, the closing credits, where she stares out a window and wonders if there is a better place out there, and she laments if perfect places exist. If you were to record an entire movie based off this record, it would definitely be a melodrama. Just with the sounds, the emotions, the theming, and ultimately how many people are able to put themselves within the narrative to feel something. Truly, only Lorde really knows the inherent truths and facts of her own story, but like the melodramas of yesteryear, I found that a lot of queer people, particularly queer people coming into age now and at the time of the album's release, clung on to that story as their own truths, which honestly I was guilty of. I am Lorde's age. It scares me that someone so young and talented is just out there making amazing music. It's ironic. We are paying tribute in the way that many queer people in the past loved melodramas, but now in different climates and different social times, like, we're actually allowed to really express ourselves and put ourselves into the stories in ways that other people couldn't. I really think that the appeal of the album and how specific it was one of the many reasons why Melodrama just was not the smash hit Pure Heroine was. Honestly, Pure Heroine is a universal album more so than Melodrama ever was. Anyone can listen to songs like Royals or Team and find something there for themselves. But in Jack Antonoff's layered and admittedly niche production, and in Lorde's specific and literary reference-heavy lyrics, it takes a specific perspective to truly stand and appreciate the art that they present forward. For a demographic where second adolescence happens more often than not, and there's a fixation on youth and the emotional implications of fitting in consume so much of our daily living, it's almost like a suspended moment. It's almost like something that was made for us despite not really being made for us. Melodrama is a work of art. It's honestly not for everybody, but it's on its way to becoming a timeless cult classic that's sure to be a staple for any angsty 19-year-old mad at the world, yet reflective enough to wonder why they feel that way. And maybe that's why the gays stand it so hard. And now, just to honor the album, I want to talk about each specific track. So, Greenlight is such a unique opening single. I always found it a little bit odd. I remember reading an interview where Lorde said that Max Martin said that the song was essentially borked when it came to charting. Like, it wasn't catchy, it wasn't built for the charts, and it's very strange. There's like a anticlimactic build-up and then a euphoric chorus. Like, the way it sounds is so odd and unique and truly something to behold. But then I finally really got it when I listened to it over and over again. I was obsessed with the song once I got over how odd it sounded, and now I listen to it all the time. Hearing it on tour definitely made it the song that it is for me now. Sober was something that I did not initially like upon its release, but eventually grew on me. It was very minimalistic compared to all the other tracks, and I feel like she did that on purpose. It definitely would be something that fits more on Pure Heroine in some senses and ways. It feels like a natural evolution of that. The way that she really uses her voice in this track is really cool. It feels somewhat like an attack, but also in moments it feels like a retreat. Homemade Dynamite was borked, essentially. It was like ruined by the climate at the time. There had been the Manchester bombings, and then Lorde got sick before she could perform it at the VMAs, where she ended up doing an interpretive dance that was mixed in response. I thought it was very tasteful and fun. Homemade Dynamite is such a fun track. I really hope that she makes music like this again. The remix featuring Post Malone, Khalid, and SZA, it's so ironic that all three of those artists would really blow up. I felt like it was a label Hail Mary though. Okay, so The Louvre has always been one of my favorite tracks just because of the lyric work and the construction. Flume, produced the shit out of this track. I really just love the energy here. I just love the synergy. It's just such a romantic and beautiful track. And there's a layer of innocence, but also this layer of backhanded worry that doesn't need to be there. It really captures the anxiety of realizing realizing that you like someone and realizing that those feelings are beautiful to you, but you don't know if they're beautiful to them. And there's just this sort of like pull back and forth and the sort of anxiety that the song produces. Like the lyric, I'm your sweetheart, psychopathic crush, drink up your movements, and I still can't get enough. I overthink your punctuation use. Not my fault, just a thing that my mind do. That is something that, like, if you really like someone or you're really infatuated with them, it just hits you really hard. Like, I forgot how powerful that lyric was. Okay, so Liability, all I'm gonna say is that if you've never cried in the back of an Uber or a taxi or a Lyft to this song, you have not lived, you are not part of Gen Z, you are not a late millennial, you need to go do it right now. I have cried in the back of so many taxis to the song, and honestly, I just feel the song. You guys have to do it. Hard Feelings is one of my favorite deep cuts ever. The first time that I heard the song, I really felt like I had lost someone in my own life. I felt like I was mourning her relationship the way that I would mourn my own relationship. There's just such a beautiful, deep empathy that comes from the lyrics and the production and that break, that instrumental break that sounds like a broken washing machine, and then the transition to Loveless. That is just like, oh, she really snapped there, you know? Like on the vinyl, you actually have to flip to start Loveless. But when you're listening to it on streaming services, there's such a beautiful intercut right there that I just prefer listening to the streaming version than my actual vinyl, which I got signed. The whole reprise thing is really interesting because Jack Antonoff did it on his own record for Bleachers shortly before this album even got released, but here it really works. Sober 2 is such an interesting look. I love how it sounded when I was watching it on tour. Writer in the Dark is such a personal track to me. I know I haven't lived Lorde's story, but as someone who's like an aspiring writer, I really just felt the song at the moment. I had been rejected from grad school 3 times when I really bonded with the song, and also like someone tried to get engaged with me and I turned them down, and just the strength of realizing that you're your own person and that other people will like rue the day they kissed a writer in the dark. Oh my god, it's just so dramatic and so powerful, and just really, I really keep on saying powerful, but this album is filled with so much nuggets of wisdom, so many combinations of words that you never would think for yourself, but then they come together and Lorde really pieces this image and this understanding in a way that's just so crystal clear and just very, you know, just awestrucking. You know, I can't really even come up with the words to describe the song. And the way that her vocals bleed throughout the vocals, the way that it really just like simmers deep into the instrumental and becomes a part of it. It's just like art. Supercut is every gay's favorite basic song, and I still love the shit out of it regardless. Like, I keep on seeing this on everybody's like listings for like their ships and everything. Like, this is like shipper music. Like, if you are someone who ships fictional characters, you'll always use this track at some point in your playlist. But there's just a truth to power here. The way that she reverses the piano chords from Greenlight, I just thought that's brilliant because it's like a hard stop. Greenlight, it's like waiting to go, and here it's realizing that it's over, that you've hit the red light, that it's stopped. And the reversal of chords is always such a cool concept because it's like a meta-textual reading of your own work, and I really love when artists do that. The Liability reprise was never my favorite track. And to this day, it still really isn't my favorite track, but I understand why it's there. I understand how cathartic it is to the mission of the record, and I finally sort of get it now. And now, if you finally made it to here, I'm just gonna fangirl over Perfect Places. Perfect Places is the song of our times. It is a timeless song, though. It is about the angst of realizing that you're getting older and that your heroes are dying and that the world that you were promised isn't exactly that perfect place that everybody said it was going to be. It's about realizing that the adults in your life have honestly failed you at some point, but you will fail other people the way they failed you. It's about the humanity of existing. It's about the ephemeral nature of life. It is just ultimately one of the most powerful songs that I've heard in my entire life. Her performances live of it just don't do it justice. When I heard it on tour, I literally cried tears of joy. That's how magical hearing it was. Like, I could not get over how brilliant that Lorde really is. And it's such a perfect closing. Like, I'm really losing my breath at how awestruck I am at this record. Melodrama honestly isn't a record for everybody, and I understand that now that it's been 3 years since the album's dropped. In truth, honestly, like, I love this record to bits. It will always be one of my favorite records, and it will always mean something to me, and I understand now why the queer community has such a love for it. It's reverent of the genre that it's named after, and it's also truly a poignant and deep story that I think is universal in a way that's specific. It doesn't take everybody to really understand it, but the people who do get it, there's a community in there that understands what it means to them and carries on its legacy. Lorde, we're ready for album 3, but take your time and really make something that's going to be magical and amazing. I know you can do it. I'm looking forward to it. Every time I get an email from you, I tear up a little bit. I can't wait for Lorde 3. Once again, guys, thank you so much for watching my video. I wanted to say something a little bit different before I started talking about the music the way that I usually do. I love trying to find angles to really reinterpret artists and their albums in a way that's more personal to me. I don't want to make boring retrospective videos all the time. I want to sort of find an angle. So thank you again. If you like this, follow, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you haven't. I have live streams all the time. I will keep on doing those live streams. I don't care if you unsub me. Thank you so much. Like, dislike, engage, whatever. Live your life and comment your favorite track below.